if they do go out of the Champions League before the last 16, I think he should go.
I'm the boss, I'm the manager, and I'm not good enough. It's as simple as that. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing well. That is the truth.
If this current form continues at Man City, in a couple of weeks we could very well be seeing the unthinkable. It's Pep Guardiola we're talking about here. It's almost unimaginable thinking about it. But the big question now is, can Man City really pull the plug on Pep Guardiola? Why would they want to? Would it all make sense then? Before we answer these questions though, you know the drill by now. Hit that subscribe button to Futbol Historia if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on the latest videos like this. Back to Pep now, and it's safe to say that the 5-1 defeat to Arsenal was a very huge blow. In his words, it shouldn't have happened, but it happened. Honestly, as big as the defeat was, it wouldn't have been such a big deal if it was a one-off. But in the context of the entire season so far, this is the latest in a series of strange results. As a team, this has been very uncharacteristic. So many negative records have already been set this season. Want a few? In that 6-game winless run they had toward the end of the year, broke Pep's record for the most consecutive games with a defeat, 6. After losing 4-0 to Spurs at home, a 5th straight defeat in all competitions, it became the club's worst run of form in 18 years. 18 years, man. That's older than Lamine Yamal. But I want us to see it from the context of this season, because that's where the real talking points are. Here's another example. Before this season, a Pep Guardiola-led side had only lost by a 4-goal margin 3 times in his entire coaching career. 3 times from 2008 to 2025, a 17-year span. It's happened twice in the last 3 months. I could go on and on with the narratives and the results, like the fact that defensively, as at the time of recording this, Man City have conceded more goals in the league with 35 than Man United with 34. Shocking when you consider the extremes between the two clubs. But you probably already understand the idea by now. This Man City form, this team in 2024-25, it's shocking to say the least.
I mean, this City team has absolutely fallen off a cliff, and right now don't look as though they can beat anybody.
In trying to understand what the issue is and why all of this is happening, this has to be an angle. From the idea of what the club has been under Pep Guardiola for years, all of this, the bad form that is, has happened so quickly that it's almost like no one can understand why the team is performing this way, because they've been used to winning for so many years. What was supposed to be a blip has now turned into a full-scale crisis. But we've got to attempt an explanation, because for a club like Man City, this has to have its roots somewhere, or in something, and as has been a theme for large parts of the season, Pep has pretty much given reasons as to why his team has been performing like this.
I think when we are in trouble, like we are, because in 9 years never had in the situation that many injuries for many reasons, and
he's been very clear with the situation here. In 9 years, he's never experienced this at the club. A full-blown crisis. It was so bad that at a point in the season, City had just 13 first-team players available. On his part, Pep Guardiola believes if he's got his players back, his team can perform, mainly because these injuries have been in key positions on the pitch. Now here's the crazy part, guys. It might seem weird what I'm about to say, but just how much of this injury crisis is down to Pep?
Why wait till the end of the month to bring it?
Why wait? The games they've lost in this January, they wouldn't have lost most of those games. But Pep being Pep, very stubborn, sticks to what he knows and only what he knows and what he wants to do. He's lost this battle.
How much of this makes sense then? Let's dissect it. The injuries Man City have had this season have been to key personnel in key areas of the pitch. Rodri is out long-term with an ACL injury. The likes of Jeremy Doku, Ruben Diaz, John Stones and Kevin De Bruyne, who is having to get his minutes managed. All these guys are big players who play big roles for the team. You could argue that in the January transfer window, Pep has finally gotten replacements, or options in these positions. Nico Gonzalez from Porto is another option in the base of midfield as a 6. Abdulkadir Kushanov and Vitor Rice are 2 young centre-backs to add depth to the position, and Omar Marmoush is a versatile forward who can act as cover anywhere across the front 3. That's good, right? Well, yeah, but the point John Obi Mikel is trying to make, which makes sense, is that City could have potentially avoided the injury crisis, and the blame on it they have now if Pep had been proactive and made these signings earlier, in the summer window while the season was still in the early stages. Remember guys, that in all of this, we're still trying to look at possible reasons why the club could even think of letting Pep go, and this could potentially be one of them. The fact that Pep has been so stubborn, he's almost lost the ability to be proactive.
I see Mahrez just coming out with a pair of Travis Scotts and just walking on. Man didn't even play. I saw Alvarez talking to Garnacho and Martinez that didn't even play. Chilling, saw Foden just bopping out. That's not 10 minutes. Like, mad.
The players this podcast is talking about are from the City 2022-23 team. See guys, the idea here is, part of what has made Man City so successful over the last couple of years, their fabric if you like, has been the massive squad depth the team has had over the years. Not just players in positions, but quality players too. They legit had the likes of Riyad Mahrez, Cole Palmer, Julian Alvarez, Aymeric Laporte, João Cancelo, Kyle Walker. All the players I've just mentioned now, minus Cole Palmer probably, played important parts in City's success in recent years. They aren't at the club any longer, and if we're stating fact, the team has failed to replace them. Injuries, though, aren't the only thing on the table when it comes to the discussion of City replacing Pep. There could be another reason why.
What we've learned about Phil Foden is that he is obviously incredibly talented and an incredibly skillful talent. Of course, he is individually, but he's heavily reliant on the environment around him and the system.
Now guys, what we're going to do is try to link this to the current City team. You know this gets memed a lot, but again it's part of our grand narrative. Pep Guardiola has had a system for years. Credit to the man, he's introduced short tweaks to his system that have allowed it to evolve and keep producing results. But the general idea has been the same for years. Keeping possession is not necessarily tiki-taka football to pass just for the sake of it, but Pep's team uses overloads to create multiple passing options. To break this down further, it means they can overload one side of the pitch just to free up another side of the same pitch, and once the switch is made, they get on the attack. It's usually to devastating effect. This is a high-risk, high-reward system, and there's always the threat of getting caught out on the counter, and that's why players like Rodri and even Kyle Walker, when he still had the legs, have been so key to Pep's system. They have the ability to spot where the danger is, cover the spaces, and get the team flowing. Same with goalkeeper Ederson too. His ability and confidence on the ball have made him an asset to this City team for years.
And the most important one, as you can see, was position. You have to stay in your position, trust your teammates in order for that ball to come to you. So for example, I'm going to show you now if I can. Sometime in training, to make you understand that, and especially for Xavi and Iniesta, he was putting some cones, and I'm going to draw a line here. It's easier for me. Up until, I will say, the last third, okay? And guys that were supposed to play on the right were not allowed to cross on the left, and on the left, you're not allowed to cross on the right.
As you can see from Henry's discussion, it goes back to his Barcelona days. Listen to what Henry says about it, that if the players don't do what is asked of them, they'll be in trouble. I've highlighted the system so far to explain a problem. It's no secret now that this season, Pep's system has been found out on multiple occasions. You look at the likes of Bournemouth, Brighton, Spurs, Arsenal, Liverpool, Sporting Lisbon, and PSG, all teams who've beaten City this season, and they've been able to not just study Pep's patterns of play, but find ways to beat it. The big question now is, how good is this City team when the tactics get found out like they have been? Not very much. If you look at the likes of Phil Foden, or even as far back as Raheem Sterling, these are players who flourished at City because of the system Guardiola brought to the club. In essence, the way the team has been set up as a collective brought the best out of these guys. Now it isn't there, they've struggled. The players are struggling too. Uncharacteristic mistakes, looking too easy to carve out. It's almost as if the team is getting picked out on a single-player basis than the collective that used to be for years. Right guys, so we've looked at the possible reasons now. The system getting found out, Pep and his team dealing with an injury crisis that in reality could have been prevented if they'd been proactive, and the poor run of form. Now let's answer the big question. Could Man City sack Pep Guardiola? It might seem like such a long time ago, but if you look at the managers who were at the job before Pep came in, they left for reasons quite similar to the ones we've quoted with Pep in this video.
Manager Roberto Mancini has been sacked by Manchester City, but after surrendering the title to local rivals Manchester United this year, exiting the Champions League group stages, and suffering a shock 1-0 defeat in the weekend's FA Cup final against Wigan, the board have removed Mancini from his post with immediate effect.
Unless some sort of miracle happens, Man City's dominance in the Premier League will come to an end this season. they won't be adding another league title to the collection. They're out of the Carabao Cup, meaning the only realistic piece of silverware left to fight for will be the FA Cup. Just imagine this, guys. Imagine City doesn't win the FA Cup or gets knocked out early. A trophyless season. That could be on the same par with Roberto Mancini's 2012-13 season, the one that led to his sacking in the summer of that year. I know this is crazy, but again, it's not far from what could happen. You could make the argument that the love the fans have for Pep could counter this, but again, they had the same love for the man we quoted earlier, Mancini.
I've been coming to watch Manchester City since 1965, and in all that time, in my opinion, he's the best manager we've ever had.
After Roberto Mancini, in came Manuel Pellegrini, the man who restored City's status as the best team in the country. He left of his own volition. Again, he had the same reaction from the fans. They loved him due to the measure of success he brought back to the club. These two, Roberto Mancini and Manuel Pellegrini, were the most successful managers City had post the Saudi takeover in 2008, and yet they left. The reason we talked about these two a bit is to try and understand if City could indeed decide to sack Pep in the coming months. Could they do it then? Well, if they did, it'd be stupid. This season has been a crisis yet, but it takes nothing away from the fact that close to the last decade, Man City has been the best English team on the planet. He has massively improved players. Without a doubt, the successes of players like Rodri, John Stones, Phil Foden, and Ilkay Gundogan might even throw Erling Haaland into the mix. All these guys were players with talent, and then Pep came along and took them to the next level. It goes beyond that too. The management. You hear City chairman Khaldoon Al-Mubarak speak about Pep, and it's easy to tell that this isn't rehearsed. It portrays just how much respect the club has for Pep. They attribute the success of the modern era to him, and rightly so. The unbelievable part about this is, if you look at clubs like Man United, Arsenal, and maybe even Liverpool, they've had their glory days in the past, and now their current teams are trying to live up to them. With Pep and Man City, the glory days are now, and they're setting standards for future teams to try and beat. On his part too, Pep Guardiola and Man City are special. A joke, but in the context of the club and the project, Pep loves the club. Barcelona, Bayern Munich, he was at both clubs for 4 and 3 years respectively. Put these two together, a total of 7 years, and that still doesn't add up to how long Pep has spent as the Man City manager, 9 years. You listen to players like Erling Haaland talk about him, and you understand that it's nothing but admiration for the man. Pep is a genius and has been Man City's genius for years. He's worked so hard to get the club to the level they are now. Since he's been at the club, he's only failed to win the league in 2 out of the 9 seasons he's been there. Allow that to sink in. The toughest league in the world, and somehow, Pep has come in and monopolised it. Even if City fails to win the league this year, it'll be 7 league titles in 10 years. I mean, that in itself is mind-blowing. Knowing Pep and what he has achieved, this season will only go to increase his competitive hunger. I mean, look at the passion on his face when he talks about those defeats. Could even make an argument that he's allowed his team to become this bad so they can get that hunger back again. In all, Man City sacking Pep Guardiola wouldn't be happening anytime soon. If we're being completely honest, Pep's legacy almost allows for this sort of bad run to happen and not get blown out of proportion like it would have with other managers. Again, City has never had a coach as successful as the Spaniard, and they probably never will again. Pep loves a challenge, and this one has to be the biggest of his career, getting his City team back to the levels they were once at. We've seen teams do it too, bounce from a fall-off and get back up again. Liverpool between 2020 and 2022 won the league in COVID, had that bad run the next season that made the team finish 3rd, miles off City, only to come within a point of winning the league the next season. We're mentioning this to show that the best teams like Pep City, managers like Pep, what makes them so special is the ability to bounce back from challenging situations, and this certainly is. To do that though, Pep will need his players firing, especially the new ones, and one of them has to be Omar Marmoush, particularly after the sale of a player who, just like what Marmoush promises could be, was just as important. Want to find out why Pep Guardiola regrets selling Julian Alvarez? It's all in the next video.